Boom, boom. Welcome to QAV America, Tony, episode 53. It's the 19th of May, 2026. Trump went to China, Tony.
He did.
Came back with a nice T-shirt and some knockoff Nikes, and that's about it.
He was flogging copies of Heart of the Deal in Tiananmen Square.
Yeah. It sounds like it was a bit of a nothing meeting. They had nothing really to announce, a few sort of minor things, but nothing about opening the Strait of Hormuz, nothing really about trade deals. I think China's going to, China's going to buy some more beef, US beef. I think that was it, really.
My read on it was, between the lines, was that Xi Jinping said, hey, we're going to take over Taiwan at some stage, don't get involved. And Trump said, hey, sounds good if you can help us get the Straits of Hormuz open. And they wouldn't announce formally either of those two things, I wouldn't think.
No. But, technically speaking, Taiwan is already part of China.
I know.
Everyone agrees to that.
Don't go down this road.
Everyone agrees to that, including the US, including Australia. It's the one China policy. Everyone's always agreed to that since the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
Even Taiwan agrees with that. They just think they run China. They think they just believe they're the real Chinese government.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Anyway, it was sort of a bizarre trip. Like the leaders of the two major economies meet in secret and really have nothing to announce afterwards.
Yeah, so that leads me to think something was going on behind the scenes that they can't announce. So, I mean, it's
or
good.
Nothing, or they reach no agreements on anything.
Yes, of course, that's possible. But it's good to see the two leaders get together. They're not sniping at each other from across the Pacific Ocean. That's got to be a good thing. What did Trump say? He said, I like it here. I could live here for a long time. I could stay here. It's great.
He might have to, depending on how things play out.
That's what I thought. I thought, I'm glad you like Chinese food.
Like Latin American dictators, after they got kicked out of their countries, had to go to Florida.
Right.
The guy from Florida might have to go to Beijing to live. It was, I don't know what went on, but reading between the lines for me, he went there to try and get support to get Iran to bow down.
Yeah.
And
definitely.
they went, no, and, reach a deal and cut it out because this is annoying.
Maybe.
And
I thought it was like, you want that? Have a look over here at Taiwan. Don't get involved.
Yeah, maybe. I don't think they need to worry about Taiwan. I think Taiwan's just going to, knock on their door and ask to be part of it the way things are going, but we'll see.
A bit like Cuba knocking on the door and wanting to be part of the US.
No, not like that at all. No, but the Taiwan, like every country, they're going to need to pick a side at some point. They're going to need to decide where their future is best placed. Is it by an alliance with the United States or an alliance with China?
I'm not sure alliances with the US are worth much at the moment. So
that's my point. Yeah. So anyway, we talked briefly about this on the last show, the Australian show, but it's more appropriate to talk about it here. So the bond market in the US is going through some friction at the moment. The US 30-year yield went above 5% for the first time since 2007. Trump, in his campaign for his second term, promised to fix the economy, eliminate the debt, crush inflation, no wars, peace everywhere. He's 16 months in.
He obviously had his fingers crossed.
Debt has grown by $4 trillion. Inflation is rising. Manufacturing has shrunk. The Supreme Court has thrown out his tariffs that were going to bring in so much money that America wouldn't know what to do with. His economic approval rating is the worst of his career, down to 30%. So going about as well as you would expect when you put a reality TV star in charge of the world's leading economy. But
And I think Amazon are looking at rebooting The Apprentice, starring one of the Trump boys. So the succession plan's in place.
Yeah.
But anyway,
So,
the bond market's having nothing of it, isn't it? That's the real important thing for investors.
well, on one hand, the S&P is booming. On the other, although it's back a bit over the last few days, but on the other hand, the bond market is pricing in the reality of the long-term picture, which isn't pretty.
No. Including the fact that US debt's up. It's no sign of it being reined in. But also the oil price is going to be higher for longer, I think, than people are factoring at the moment too, except for the bond market. They can see it happening, or at least they're guarding against it happening. But the bond market rules the roost, really. If interest rates or if yields on bonds keep going up, that raises the cost of borrowing for corporate America, and so the growth slows. And if the problems aren't fixed by the government, then it just leads to a collapse somewhere down the track in the reckoning.
And Walsh has now been confirmed as the new Federal Reserve Chairman. Jay Powell is on his way out, or is out. I'm not exactly sure what the timeline is on that. But, there was this expectation that Walsh was going to come in and cut interest rates. But with inflation going up, close to 4% now, and people think it'll go over 4%. Apparently, historically, when US inflation crosses 4%, the S&P falls 4% over the next 3 months and then 7% over 6 months. But maybe this time it's different, Tony. Because
three of the most unreliable words in the English language. This time it's different.
It's 4 words.
4 words, yeah.
There's a Halim, like every economist I've read in the last month or 6 weeks has said, even if the Strait opened tomorrow, we're going to see at least 6 months of higher oil prices. There's a lady called Halima Croft who runs commodities for RBC Capital Markets. It's the Royal Bank of Canada. Used to work at the CIA on Middle East stuff. She reckons oil is heading to $140. The way it's going, there's no sign that the Strait's going to be open anytime soon. It's still nacho. Trump did say today that he was going to authorize more bombing of Iran this week, but then didn't again because he claims Middle Eastern countries asked him not to. And negotiations with Iran are going tremendously well, better than any negotiations have ever gone in the history of negotiations. You wouldn't believe how great these negotiations are going. U.S. Treasury Secretary Bessent called this,
Tacos
instead of Taco Tuesday, Nacho Monday. Bessent called this inflation transient, which apparently is the same word Powell used in 2021 coming out of COVID, but it turned out not to be transient. So apparently it's the T word. Markets reacted badly to the T word being used, which I thought was Trump, but it's the other T word. It's transient.
Wasn't taco?
Taco. So many T words.
Yeah.
Well, I was looking for a stock I don't really have any company news this week. I was looking for a stock to do a deep dive on and to add to our portfolio this week, and it was tough. I went through 20 stocks at the top of the buy list, and everything was having a down day when I was looking at them on Sunday, Monday. Until I finally found the company that I am going to talk about today, which is BWLP is the ticker, BWLPG Limited. And, it's kind of a interesting story. Again, it's sort of pretty boring, classic value investing stock, I think, in many ways. The numbers are a little bit interesting, but we'll get into the whys and wherefores. Nothing as complicated as some of the ones I've looked at in the last couple of weeks. By the way, there were some more of those when I was trying to find a company. A lot of financial services companies on the buy list in the US this week, but a lot of them just had massive dumps of new capital
right.
which is affecting their operating cash flow, and we decided to put the kibosh on those. But BWLPG, as you might be able to tell from the name, is an LPG company. They ship gas. We always say we're looking for mass, not gas, in terms of investing.
We got both.
Well, they have mass and gas.
Yeah.
Their gas brings them mass. They're on the New York Stock Exchange, also listed in Oslo as BWLPG.
And
So
based in Singapore. It's a very trans-global company.
Yes, very interesting. We'll get into the history of why that is shortly. But they specifically ship LPG, propane and butane, as opposed to LNG, methane. I had to remind myself what the difference is between the two. So for people out there who don't know their gases, LPG, easier to liquefy, 42 degrees, minus 42 degrees Celsius, or moderate pressure at room temperature. Used for cooking, heating, auto gas, petrochemical feedstock. LNG, much harder to liquefy, minus 162 degrees Celsius, cryogenic. It's used for power generation, city gas grids, industrial applications, industrial level heat, that sort of thing. So BWLP ships the LPG stuff, similar to a company that we already hold in the dummy portfolio, GASS, GASS, that we have held for quite a while. Let me just remind myself. GASS transaction. When did I buy GASS? Added GASS back in October 2023. One of the first stocks I added to our US portfolio. It is up.
Does that make it classical gas if you've had it for that long?
Wow, this is a 70s joke. Is that a 70s classical gas? How does it go? You want to sing it?
Well, you can't sing it. It's an instrumental.
Instrumental? You can sing an instrumental.
I had a friend who could play that on the guitar.
Okay.
Showed me once, yeah.
I've been. You should have prepared for this. You should have pulled your guitar out and been able to play it.
Yeah.
Gas is up about 100% since I added it October 23, so it's had a good run.
That's pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah. But these guys are much, much, much bigger. Same industry, different pond. They both transport LPG by sea, but in different parts of the country and different philosophies. So to give you an example, GAS has 29 ships across 3 smaller classes. BWLP has 50 VLGCs. A VLGC is a very large gas carrier. Gas mostly deals around Europe, Mediterranean, intra-Asia, that kind of thing. BWLP does US Gulf to Asia and Middle East to Asia long haul. Market cap-wise, gas is about $375 million US. BWLP is about $3 billion US. So these guys are really, really big, as are the ships that they have. A VLGC, very large gas carrier, is about 230 meters long.
Wow.
And they carry about 44 to 47,000 tons of LPG, which is chilled down to minus 42 degrees Celsius down in the hull. So it stays liquid. Anyway, that's what they do. Been listed on the New York Stock Exchange only since April 2024, so only 2 years on the NYSE, but listed in Oslo since 2013, which is the primary listing. Not an ADR in the US, I checked that. They have common share trades on both exchanges. And as you said, they're Singapore incorporated. They moved their domicile from Bermuda to Singapore in July of 2024, and they report in US dollars.
So they like head offices in low tax environments.
That's got nothing to do with it, Tony, at all. Purely coincidental that those things would be happening, I'm sure. So what do they do? Well, imagine you're a Korean utility or a Japanese petrochemical company. You burn propane as fuel, or you use it as feedstocks to make plastics and chemicals. You buy it from a trader. That trader has bought it from a producer in the US Gulf or from Qatar or from Iran. You have to get it from the place that manufactures it to your facility, and you do that on a really big ship. I was going to say boat, but I know they're not boats, they're ships. And so you can hire a ship from BWLP. How would you, BWLP? BWLP, that's what I'm going to call them, BWLP. You can hire a ship from BWLP to do
the
that.
Beatles White LP.
Oh, yeah,
BWLP,
good. Yeah, the BWLP.
Hmm.
It takes about 40 days from the US Gulf to Japan via the Panama Canal, or the US Canal, the American Canal, as it the Trump Canal, as it will be by the time he's finished.
Well, they should rename it the Hormuz Canal, so then Trump can say, "Hey, I've opened the strait."
Yeah, that's clever, good thinking. Yeah. Or about 18 days from the Middle East to India. And there's basically two ways that BWLP rent out these vehicles. The first is spot charters, where you hire a ship for a single voyage at the going market rate, quoted in dollars per ton or dollars per day, and that price bounces around enormously, particularly high at the moment for some strange reason. And purely coincidental.
Yeah.
Or the second is time charters, where you have a fixed period, 6 months, 2 years, 5 years, at a fixed daily rate. And these guys are roughly 50-50. You know, they kind of have a balance of the two, for strategic reasons. Right now, getting back to the spot charters, the Houston to Chiba, named after Sonny Chiba in Japan, voyage, is in the region of about $300 per metric ton, which converts to about $170,000 per day. And that's a record. The lows are more like $15,000 to $20,000 per day.
Right.
So that's a big hike in the cost of getting gas moved around, because you can't move it through the strait. And so you're having to get it from other parts of the world. Takes longer to get to there from the US, and there's less ships available, et cetera, et cetera.
No, I think there's other reasons too. I mean, it's more oil is being exported by the US now because it can't come from the Middle East. So that's put a premium on. Yeah, oil, gas. It's all interrelated.
It's all oil.
Yeah.
All oil. Petrochemical.
But also too, apparently the Panama Canal's backed up. Needs to have a dose of prunes. Yeah.
Needs an
so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, so much.
Did I tell you about my constipation story?
Luckily, no.
Well, I'm hardcore with my diet and my smoothies.
Uh-huh.
I got a little bit overzealous with the fiber, the chia seeds and the psyllium husk that I was having. I was like, well, if 10 grams a day is good, 50 grams is going to be excellent. So I had a very uncomfortable 2 hours in the bathroom a couple of months ago. Thought I was going to die. Anywho, the relevant performance measure for these guys is something called TCE, Time Charter Equivalent Income. It's the revenue from chartering the ship minus the voyage costs, fuel, port charges, brokerage, express per day, and that normalizes across spot and time charter mixes. So at the end of the day, what you're looking at is TCE. BW's full year 2025 TCE income per available day was just over $45,000 across the fleet. Q4 2005 specifically was $50,270 per available day. So running hotter than the full year average because the spot market accelerated in the back half of the year. And the numbers that we're using are their full financial year numbers, and I've got their quarterly numbers as well, but none of the strait didn't close until March, so it hasn't really flowed through to their reported numbers yet.
Right.
But there was tension with Iran when the US and Israel were bombing Iran in the middle of last year. So that flowed into the 2025 numbers. But there was also tariff wars and all of that kind of stuff going on. I read the CEO's opening to the annual report, and, you know, for guys like this, obviously it's been a very tricky year. A lot of geopolitical conflicts and things to have to navigate. For comparison, the prior FY 2024 figure was 48,300. So the full year 2012 was 45,000. It was down about 7% year over year. But the fleet grew. They bought a bunch of ships, so their total earnings grew. Q4 2025 alone was up 33% over Q4 2024, even though rates were down. So that shows you how much they grew the fleet. For full year 2025, only about 28% of the fleet days were on fixed time charters, not really 50-50. The rest were on the spot curve, but that changed by Q4 to 44%. As they locked in more at higher rates. So it's roughly, what's that, 56, 54 now, as of Q4 anyway. So they also have another division, which I found interesting. They have a separate trading division called Product Services, which is actually in competition with the people who supply the LPG. It's a physical LPG trading business that they run in-house. They buy LPG cargoes themselves at one port, then move the cargo across the ocean, usually on their own ships, sometimes on other people's ships, but usually on their own ships, sell the cargo at the other port, and hedge the price exposure with derivatives. So,
wow.
Yeah, we've talked about this before in a lot of these shows, people looking at share of wallet. Well, you know, we're already in the LPG business. Why not have a... I think they bought this trading arm from another company.
Right. Yep.
A couple of years ago. But so that's basically the business. Renting out ships, either at spot rates or long-term rates, and they also have a trading arm. Trading arm's not huge. In 2024, it made about $145 million in gross profit. In 2025, it made $16 million gross profit, which is a lot less than $145 million, if I've done my maths correctly. Most of that was mark to market on the unrealized derivatives book. Basically, the paper value of their hedges moved against them year on year, but it'll wash out over time, I think. So the company itself hasn't been listed that long and is only about 12 years old as a separately listed entity, but goes back to one of the great shipping fortunes of the 20th century. Two businesses came together to make the BW Group. Powell's Worldwide Shipping and Bergersen DY, which is a Norwegian shipping family business founded in 1935 by a chap named Sigvald Bergersen the Younger. I think that's what the DY, De Younger, actually means. I'm being serious. He had a falling out with his father, Bergersen the Elder, and set up his own shipping company. But that had been around since 1935. Worldwide Shipping was founded in Hong Kong in 1955 by Sir Yukon Powell, Y.K. Powell, who ended up one of the richest guys in Hong Kong. He had come to Hong Kong from China in 1949 during the Chinese Civil War, much like my grandmaster's master, Yip Man. You ever seen any of the Yip Man films, Tony?
I have
Donnie
not.
Yen as Yip Man? Should watch it.
Yeah.
Yeah, Yip Man went to Hong Kong and started teaching Wing Chun Kung Fu. Y.K. Powell went there and set up a shipping empire. He'd been a banking clerk in Shanghai, went to Hong Kong with nothing more than the shirt on his back, and then ended up building the largest privately held shipping fleet in the world by 1979. 202 ships, 20.5 million deadweight tons. Yeah, sorry.
Interesting story. So as I read today when I was preparing for the podcast, I think when he went to Hong Kong, he was struggling to find a career. He was working in the bank, but he was also trying to import things after World War II into Hong Kong. And that sort of led him to buy his first ship because he was an importer. And then he expanded a little bit, but he locked in long-term low-rate contracts with the Japanese. And that was the making of him, because the shipping companies, by and large, were run by the Greek tycoons at that stage, the Onassis and people like that. And they were the reverse. They were a bit like what you were describing before. They were trying to maximise their margins and charge spot prices and, control the market, all that kind of thing. But Powell said, no, if slow and steady wins the race, if I can, get long-term contracts which benefit the customers, I make a little bit of money, and then they'll give me more work and I can expand my fleet and I'll make a lot of money out of a little bit of money on each ship. And eventually, after a couple of decades, he just dominated the shipping lanes.
Wow. Slow and steady wins the race. A bit like the Ray Kroc story. Just do the right thing, look after your customers, look after your suppliers. Good for him. He got knighted by Queen Elizabeth in 1978, was personal friends with Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher. Newsweek magazine put him on its front cover in 1976 with the headline, King of the Sea. I think that makes him Aquaman, or the Deep, if you're watching The Boys. Yeah. Had less sex with octopuses, but apart from that, he was just like the Deep.
I'm just trying to find, if I can find it quickly, he had a quote. Here it is here. When he passed away in 1991, he lived his entire life by an unyielding personal motto: exercise persistently, use sparingly, work diligently. That was his motto.
Yeah. Say that again. Exercise persistently.
Yep. Use sparingly and work diligently.
Pretty good. Yeah. So Bergeson, I mentioned, comes out of Norway, another sort of large shipping enterprise. They combined in 2004. Owned at the time 93% by the Schollman family and 7% by HSBC. Schollman is from Helmut Schollman. He's an Austrian lawyer and businessman, or was in Hong Kong. Was chairman of the BW Group and a Hong Kong lawyer, or legislator and lawyer. And he comes into the picture because he married Powell's eldest daughter, Anna Pui Hing Powell, and ended up sort of taking over the family business. He stayed at the helm until 2014 when he handed over to his son, Andreas Schollman Powell. He's got a double-barreled last name for both of his grandparents, I think. And one of the reasons they did the New York Stock Exchange listing in 2024, I think, is that the buyer base for LPG shipping equities is largely American institutional money. Most LPG demand growth is in Asia, but the production growth is in the United States,
right?
Particularly the Permian Basin in Texas and the Bakken in North Dakota that we talked about back on the Cord episode, which we did a while back. And Cord is in our light portfolio and doing okay. It's up 56.6% since we added it in January. That's not bad for a few months.
Just before the war.
Just before the war. That's right.
I'm shocked that an oil company went up in value after the Straits of Hormuz closed. Or a US
gas.
US is called gas, or is it oil?
No, I think they're oil. I think you're right, yeah. So when natural gas comes out of the ground, propane and butane come with it, which is why the US has become the dominant LPG exporter over the last decade. So there's a couple of things to talk about with these guys that is interesting. August 2024, they announced they were buying 12 VLGCs from a Norwegian competitor called Avance Gas for about $1 billion. And it wasn't an all-cash deal. It was sort of cash and stock deal. So Avance ended up with a big chunk of BW stock. And then they also got a CEO in the process. So the guy who was the CEO of Avance Gas, Christian Sorensen, just before this deal went down, had moved from Avance to become the deputy CEO and then the CEO later on at BW. So, yeah. You get our CEO, we get your CEO, we get your ships, you get some stock. I don't really know how that works, but it's not really a merger, but sort of a kind of a combining of forces. Anyway, they increased the size of their fleet from 51 VLGCs to 53 as a result. 53 doesn't sound like a lot of ships, but apparently it is a big deal. Interesting too, 22 of their ships are LPG dual fuel, which means they can burn LPG cargo as the ship fuel instead of heavy fuel oil or HFO. So load it and burn it. Apparently it's a much cleaner ship. Apparently HFO is like one of the worst.
It is.
Right.
Yeah, it's like below diesel in the distillate, and it's sludge, really.
Right.
Yeah.
So these ships can burn LPG instead, which is interesting. Anyway, there was another guy that came over as part of this deal. John Friedrichsen's Hemmen Holding ended up owning 9.4% of BW. He was the controlling shareholder of Avance Gas, so he got some of the shares in the deal. I don't know, it's all very convoluted, but he's, I think, the second largest shareholder now. The Schulman Power family own 32%. Fredriksen family owns 9.4%. So these are two of the great Norwegian Asian shipping dynasties of the 20th century who now together own about 41% of BWLPG. This is another interesting component of the business. They have a 100% of shipping NPAT dividend policy. The annual report says shipping NPAT is calculated as profit attributable to equity holders of BWLPG minus BWLPG's share of BWPS's net profit loss after tax. So the yield numbers look good. They pay out a pretty big dividend. Right. Depends on the yield depends on the share price, obviously. But at the time of the Q4 release in early March, the annualized yield was about 12.5%.
Wow.
So pretty strong.
Yeah. And if the latest oil prices haven't rolled through in terms of shipping income anyway, then the next quarter will be even higher.
Depending on the share price, what happens with it. But yeah, the dividend will be higher. So yeah, it's directly tied to the spot market, and at the moment, that's going bonkers through the roof. The other interesting point about this is about 18% of the group income comes from a division called BWLPG India. So these are Indian flagged, Indian operated, qualifying under India's self-reliant India preferential cargo scheme. It's 8 ships, but it means those 8 ships can transit Hormuz because India has a friendly deal with Iran.
Yeah, right.
Whereas the rest of BW ships Singapore flagged and don't get that privilege. So they still have some ships that are able to, I don't know how they navigate the mines, but
yeah,
but how do you get around the mines? Like apparently the strait's full of mines. So I don't even know if do the Iranians know where the mines are? I guess they might have some idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know. do they? I guess they know where they are. They have them on a map somewhere. They have Apple Maps telling them where they are.
They put air tags on them.
Yeah.
And they call up, find my sea mine. It's an app on their iPhones.
The flip side of this is they don't own all of BWLPG India. There's another company called Mars Capital Shipping that holds about 42% and a residual third party. But they own about 48% of them that it flows through. So what's going on in the market right now? As we said, spot rates are crazy, about $300 US per ton for the Houston to Chiba route. Hard to know exactly what impact the Hormuz closure is having on BWLP. As I said, most of their fleet is Singapore flagged. But, some of the things that I could figure out is that the closure forces Asian buyers to source LPG from the US Gulf instead of from the Middle East, so that long haul from the Pacific via the Panama Canal, what did I say like that? Now I'm in my head. Panama Canal is takes longer, right? So from the Middle East, going from Saudi Arabia to Japan is about 18 days, I think. To get it from Houston is about 40 days.
Yeah, right.
So you've got less ships. It takes more than twice as long to transport it, which is more than double the day rates, plus you're paying more expensive day rates. Shipping industry calls this ton miles, total cargo volume times distance. So you're doubling the length of the voyage and the day and the rates because there are less ships going through the roof. Yeah, it's a economic nightmare for everybody involved.
And as I said
good
before,
though if you're the guy selling the ships.
The export ports for the Gulf are obviously on the Gulf of America side, the Gulf of Mexico side, which is the Atlantic Ocean. And so if the Panama Canal is busy, which it is at the moment, trying to get oil ships and gas ships through, you're forced to go around the bottom of South America. If you can't, if you're the 100th ship in line for the Panama Canal and it's quicker to go around the bottom, you do that. But I don't know if that's figured into your 40 days, but it's got to add extra days to the trip too.
Okay, just pick them up and carry them. That was your plan for getting across Saudi Arabia, wasn't it? Or Oman, just pick them up and carry them. Yeah. Easy. Well,
if they're 200 meters long, you just line them up end to end, 55 of them through the Panama Canal, and then you just roll the barrels down from one end to the other.
Like a slippery slide?
Yeah.
Yeah. Why doesn't Elon put them on rockets? That's what I want to know. He just put them on BFG rockets and fly them over. Actually, that would be cool. His rockets are reusable. They can land. Just have a fleet of rockets flying fuel around.
That's entirely feasible, yeah.
Somebody get Elon on the phone. He's probably not having a good day because he lost his lawsuit.
What do you mean statutes of limitations? What are you talking about? Didn't you check that?
Yeah, Grok told me that was fine. So I went down a little bit of a rabbit hole on LPG because I read their annual report and they say cleaner fuels for a better world.
It's all relative.
So it is all relative. That's pretty much it. Yes. And it is, LPG is cleaner than a wood stove or HFO ship fuel or the coal-fired industry.
Mm-hmm.
It's not clean compared to LNG or renewables or electrification, but, it's clean-ish, I guess. It depends on what you're comparing it to. But a lot of the developing world, Asia, is using much dirtier sources of fuel. Correct. So I guess they can get away with it. It's not really greenwashing. That's basically it, Tony. That's the backstory of the business. Nothing more to tell you. I can tell you about how I scored them. They got a QAV score of 0.16. As I said, it was fairly low down on the list. Mm-hmm. I had to go down 20, 30 stocks to find it. Luckily, there's a lot of companies on the list, but everything else that I looked at was having a bad day. Quality rank is 89, scored for that. Stock rank is 99, scored for that. F score is 7, scored for that. Our IV1 came out at $6.36 and the price was about $21 when I looked at it, so well and truly above our IV1. However, our IV2, our forecast IV, was $26.78.
Okay.
So scored it for that. Price was not less than book or book plus 30. Did obviously have a 3-point uptrend. Also had a new 3-point uptrend, so that's good. We're catching it as it's turning up. Growth over PE was about 0.1, so couldn't score it for that. But book value growth was positive. It's about 7.4% year over year for 3 years. Yield is definitely greater than bank deposit rates. The average yield over the last year is about 7%. So not the 12% for the last quarter, but still comfortably above the bank rates. So could score it for that. And forecast intrinsic value is not greater than twice the price. As I said, it's like $26, so couldn't score it for that. And the prop CAF was 5.41. So not the lowest we've seen, but lower than the 7 that we look for. So we ended up with 9 out of 13 for our quality score. And as I said, quality score was 84.6% from our end and came in with a QAV score of 0.16. So their next AGM is on the 28th of May. They're going to be voting on a share buyback mandate of up to 10% of the issued shares, which we like to see. That'd be about 334 million at the current price. Good to know that that's on the table. But that's basically it, Tony. It's a relatively cheap company that has been doing it for a long time in one way, shape or form. They're shipping gas around. I don't think that's going anywhere.
No.
They're one of the biggest in the biz, and they're making money.
Yeah. Interesting that they've got a high yield. I mean, that was the thing that came out of my analysis, even when, you go back over the years when there wasn't problems with the Straits of Hormuz, there was still a high yielding stock. It's sort of 7%-ish type yield. And they have that payout ratio of 100% of shipping profits. So that says to me that they think they've maximized their fleet. They're not going to need capital to, double the shipping fleet, which is kind of interesting too, I thought. I guess if they need to raise capital, they'll just go out into the market and raise it if they have a, acquisition opportunity or something. But just interesting that most companies would keep something aside for growth. But this is kind of suggesting that they're maxed out.
Or like the Avance gas deal, they did it with stock.
Yeah, right.
It was cash and stock, but they were able to do a lot of it with stock. So
true.
Maybe they figure that they can buy stuff with stock if need be. But if you look at their revenue, 2020, 800 mil, up to 3.6 billion in 2025. For some reason, Stockopedia says their 2026 estimate is only 958 million. I didn't really drill into why that is. But their operating profit...
Sorry, I mean, like with a lot of these stocks at the moment, the oil depends what your forecast is for the price of oil, really, or gas, which are
but how's it going to go from 3.6 billion to 958 million in the current climate?
Especially since even if they open the straits tomorrow, it's going to take months and months and months for the world to return to normal. Yeah.
I didn't really drill into why that is. Their operating profit has gone from 282 million in 2020 up to 348 in 2025. Their net profit is about the same, actually. It did go up quite a bit in 2023, but it was 244 million in 2020 and 242 in 2025. Interestingly, that's forecast as being 400 million next year, but with the revenue dropping by 70%. So that makes no sense.
No.
But anyway, the numbers look good. There's nothing really strange or bizarre or worrisome about it. They just are a company that have a lot of big ships and move gas around. So kind of boring, kind of cheap. And they're not AI.
No.
That's probably why they're cheap. No AI in there whatsoever, but I added them to our light portfolio yesterday, and we'll see how they go.
Very good. Interesting story too, if anyone wants to go and read about Mr. Pow. Great founder story.
Yeah, one of the behemoths of the Hong Kong story in the late 20th century.
One of the things I saw was that when the oil glut happened in the 1970s, I guess it was, 1980s, late 70s, early 80s, he sort of sensed it coming and sold off a lot of his tankers and paid down debt, and was really well positioned to go through that downturn in the industry. And he started buying up physical companies on land in Hong Kong and became a big player in Hong Kong, and was the first Chinese director and eventually vice chairman of the Hong Kong and Shanghai Banking Corporation, HSBC.
Right.
Yeah.
Who ended up having a big stake in BW.
Oh, right.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I didn't make that connection. Yeah, I've read a bit in the past about both Hong Kong and Singapore's rise in, the last 50 years of the 20th century. Both amazing stories.
Yeah.
Like China's rise since 2000, the last 25 years of China's growth is amazing, and different scale and all that kind of stuff, obviously. But Hong Kong and Singapore went from these tiny little fishing port backwaters of nothing to incredibly rich and successful islands.
Yeah, and largely on the back of one or two people or a family, and on the back of setting themselves up as financial hubs with low tax rates, tax regimes. Because, as you say, it could have been Malaysia, it could have been India, it could have been any number of probably 100 areas in that Asian area that could have gone ahead as much like Hong Kong and India did, Singapore did, but they did it.
And Singapore did it basically under a dictatorship run by a single guy who the West loved. He was adored around the West, even though he ran a pretty fierce, not taking any prisoners dictatorship in Singapore. But as Hyman Roth says in The Godfather Part 2, Hyman Roth always made money for his partners.
Yeah, well, I've had a number of people who went across to Singapore for work with Shell and with other companies. Yeah, that's pretty true. They made money in Singapore, largely for tax reasons, but it was a Western trading hub in that Asian region. They had good lifestyles. I'd ask them, what do you think of the family running things? And they'd say, don't have much to do with them. They stay out of our way, we stay out of their way. But hey, the place is clean and tidy and there's no lawlessness, so it's great.
I read a good book by Graham Allison a few years ago. He did a lot of interviews with Lee Kuan Yew, and wrote a couple of books about him and his style, actually. And Graham Allison, funnily enough, is getting a lot of attention this week because he's the guy that coined the term that's been getting a lot of media since Trump met with Xi Jinping this week. The the Athenian general?
Is this the Peloponnesian Thermopylae? Not Thermopylae.
Thucydides trap. Yeah,
Yeah.
the Thucydides trap. It was Graham Allison that coined that term.
Okay.
And I think he coined it based on something that Lee Kuan Yew said about China's rise and how America would eventually react to China's rise as a challenging power. But anyway, yeah, really. But just the reading about Lee Kuan Yew and his admiration for China, and particularly the way that China ran things for thousands of years by getting the smartest people in the country and putting them in the government. So you had a government run by the smartest, not the most charismatic. And then after Deng Xiaoping took over China, he went and met with Lee Kuan Yew and figured out how China should relearn those lessons back from Singapore. So it went backwards and forwards, the intellectual trading, I guess, of how to quickly build a very, very successful country.
Right. Pity we couldn't do that here.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. What are you saying? All right. That's it for QAV America this week, Tony. Have a good week.
Thank you. You too.